Hello everyone, thank you for joining us for today's Lunch and Learn on developing independence when travelling. It's great to see so many of you here. I'm Sophia Ray, I'm a BCBA and I'm co-head of the Post-19 service at Beyond Autism. This session is being recorded, so a copy of that along with slides will be sent out after the event. Please do drop any comments, questions in the chat function, and we'll come back to these after the presentation. If there's any we don't get to, we will follow up with you via email. So anything you'd like to know, please do just drop that in that chat. So the things we're going to cover today are: what does travelling actually mean? Accessing the community safely, teaching skills for greater independence, generalising skills and fading support, managing unexpected and unplanned situations, and then a little recap. So first of all, what does travelling actually mean? So this is about moving around in the community. How does this person get from one location to another? It could be as simple as walking or using their mobility device. How are they able to access stairs, a lift, escalators, travelators, taking public transport? Now, we're based in London. A lot of our service users, a lot of our students travel by a lot of public transport: buses, tubes, trams, trains. We even have the Thames Clipper quite near one of our sites. So lots of different public transport. But also for further journeys, especially for some of our families, things like coaches, aeroplanes, this all counts as travelling. Now, we won't be touching too much on coach and aeroplane travel in this presentation. The main focus will be around public transport, but we have done work with some of our students before to work towards them getting on aeroplanes, being able to access the long waits in the busy terminals at airports and things like that. So if you are interested in that kind of aspect of travel, please do drop something in the chat and we can come back to maybe that in the questions, or I can send you something through via email. They also have, obviously, traveling in a car. Lots of families have cars. Even if a family doesn't have a car, sometimes families will use taxis, which involves some of the same skills as traveling in cars, wearing seat belts and things that aren't necessarily required on most public transport. So there are skills around that as well, but that's something, again, we won't be planning on focusing on much in this. But if that's something you're interested in, again, please do drop something in the chat and we can get to you. Some people have a preference for riding a bike or scooter to get around. That also is a form of travelling. And if that means they're able to access greater distances, access more places, and that's their preference, that is something that, again, we won't be touching on too much here, but we have had some of our students work on skills relating to riding a bike and things like that in the past as well. The first thing that we have to think of with any student, so no matter their age, so our students are all post-19, but lots of these things are applicable to even preschool children, are actually the ability to access the community. So safe access in the community, to be able to go places and do what they want to do. And that will involve being able to tolerate other people, including the noise of others. For example, baby cryings, unexpected noises, sirens is another one. You know, if you're in the community, if you're out and about, there could be police, there could be ambulances, and especially in London, that's something we often come across. And the ability to accept prompts to respond to some safety instructions. In order to be safe in the community, you have to be able to stop or wait when you need to walk with someone who knows the safe places to walk, maybe link arms with that person when necessary. To be able to get on and off buses at the right stops, you need to be able to stand up when you're being asked to stand up, or you might miss your stop, and sit down when you're asked to sit down, so you're not wobbling all over the place and falling over on the transport. So although we want to focus on independence, in order to get there, we have to look at how we can safely access first, even if that is with really high levels of support. Access is always the first step. So after we've managed to do the access skills, we look about how our students can access the community safely with reduced support. So, for example, then following those safety instructions on the previous slide when they're asked, but without additional help or support. So additionally, it might be that we're asking the student to stand up, we're putting our hands out, we're helping them kind of link and get off this. Might be, oh, it's our stop now. You're like, stand up, let's go. And they respond to that straight away without any additional support. Completing some common required skills without support. So, for example, crossing roads at marked crossings, using an Oyster or contactless card, boarding the correct bus, train, tram or tube, and moving to the door on arrival at the correct station or stop, disembarking safely. So for crossing roads, we always start with marked crossings first, pressing the button, learning the rules of, red means stop, green means go. They're far easier skills than the crossing where you have to look both ways, check whether the speed of the car, the distance away of the car, and all those things. Using Oyster and contactless cards to pay for journeys, or freedom passes, exactly the same, still tap and go, which lots of our students have. And again, thinking about this as a whole skill. So if you're the person looking after the Oyster card or the freedom pass for the student, and then you hand it to them so they can tap it when you get on the bus, then they are only able to do the tapping bit. If you weren't there, they wouldn't be able to do that sequence. So a lot of it is also thinking about where are they storing that? Where are they retrieving it from? Building up those skills so they're able to manage the whole sequence without any input from others. Boarding the correct bus, train, tram or tube. They may need visuals, all sorts of things that we'll come to later, but some skills regarding that, being able for them to be able to take some ownership and have some understanding of what they're doing, where they're going. And obviously then, again, similarly understanding of when it's time to get off. So there's lots of teaching of required skills that we can do when we're not traveling. So lots of our students need many opportunities, lots of trials in order to learn new things. And maybe there aren't that many opportunities to access the community. So we want to be able to present these and teach these skills anytime that we can, and then generalize them into the community setting. So these can be things like playing games that involve following instructions quickly, dance games, Simon Says, anything the young person's interested in, to just practice in context, those kind of stand up, sit down, stop, come here, all those kind of stills, like wait there for whatever it is. Role play, so we can also set up situations where we make a bus, here's all the steps, here's what we're doing, here's all the chairs, there's the bit you have to tap it, we're going to pretend to go on a journey, and kind of how we're going to do that. Social stories, so putting all those steps into an understandable visual for the young person, so they can have a look at that and be prepared and understand what's going to happen before it happens. That can also be used sometimes as a visual when out, so as a kind of visual guide for the young person. Just learning rote phrases, so green means go, red means stop. So you can do that as fill-ins. Green means go and play a game where running around somewhere, and then red means stop, so they're beginning to just get used to those phrases. Learning to recognise numbers, so matching bus numbers. There's lots of numbers in travelling, bus numbers, platform numbers, etc. So matching bus numbers or sticking up platform numbers around the room by different activities, and then you present the instruction to go to a specific, everyone needs to go to do this activity that's under platform 13, and they have to go over to that side of the room and complete that activity. Practice stepping off from high steps, so for them to stepping down off trains and buses can be quite a big step, and you can get kind of steps and practice the students stepping down as part of a fitness activity or any kind of activity you can bring it into, but making sure that that can be done safely for them. So yeah, we want to just increase the number of learning opportunities we present, and this means that the speed of learning is quicker and our students get to mastery quicker because they've had more opportunities to learn the skill. So we also look then at skills required for greater independence. So things like route planning, often we teach using apps, so like City Mapper. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. And then teaching skills like the ability to select the route by speed or price. Anytime you do route planning, any app or anything will give you multiple routes, and trying to choose the right route or knowing which route to choose can be difficult. So then it's about working out what the important thing is. Some people have a preference for buses, so it may be that they just want to do the route that's only buses. Some people want it to be quicker and get there quickly. Some people care more about the price, but being able to identify those things and select based on the important criteria for them is a very important skill. And then the ability to follow the planned route. So once you've planned the route, can you follow the instructions for the planned route? You need some kind of time management skills to be able to get to places on time, to be able to get to the train station in time to get the planned train, and an ability to read passenger information systems, because although planned times are for trains, I think anyone else that's ever got public transport will know that often there are delays or cancellations or changes to that. So you may have a planned route, it may tell you what time you're supposed to be at a station and what time the train's supposed to leave. But in reality, that might not actually be what happens, and the information you may get on the change might be on the passenger information system. Some awareness of safety rules, so standing behind the yellow line at a train station, for example. Knowledge of ticket purchasing. So although in London there's a lot of Oyster cards and freedom passes, etc., if our students want to go further, the zones do end, and there are ticket machines at stations, and they have to be able to use to buy train tickets to access those places. The ability to pack the items required, so planning skills for before they leave, making sure they have everything that they need with them for the journey, and safe road crossing, and that would look at more road crossing skills, for example, than ones which are signed with the press button. This would look at crossing roads maybe where there's no official crossing, but you have to look and check for moving cars. So in order to develop independence, we need to think about the strategies and supports that the person might be able to use independently. So they might be written or visual or auditory prompts. These are things that we all use in day-to-day life. Alarms, for example, we may use them to get out of bed. If you have a really long journey on a train, you may want to set an alarm for 10 minutes before, if you're going to be on there for 2 hours, so you can start packing away everything you've been doing and get ready to get off. Printed visual schedules, so all steps or some important information, for example, the bus number, something that's going to remind you of the route. or any other reminders that you might want. We talked about social stories a bit earlier, having the social story with you. Any route planning or map apps, some contain visuals, so kind of blue dots on a map. Again, I mean, I use them personally. Those follow the blue dot and check that I'm on the line. Written instructions or reminders. You can get some of those on some of these apps where there's a pop-up. So the app will remind you need to get off at the next stop. Or sometimes these apps also have auditory instructions. So they'll say things like turn right and give you the instructions. A lot of this is learner dependent. So it's, what kind of prompts work with them in other situations, in other skills that you're doing, in cooking, in anything else that you're working on. Do they have a preference for auditory prompts? Do they have a preference for visual prompts? Kind of work with them on how they like to learn these things and how they like to be reminded of what they need to do. And we also have to consider generalization. So like I mentioned a bit before earlier, we could consider road crossing as one skill, but there's so many different types of road crossing. We actually have to make sure that someone is able to do all of those, so we can make sure that they're safe out and about anywhere they want to go. So pelican, puffin, toucan crossings, those are all signed crossings that are more easy to use. A zebra crossing, again, more easy to use. The other thing that we make sure we always teach, even with signed crossings like pelican, puffin, toucan, green means go, but it also means check and then go. Unfortunately, there are more drivers out there than we'd like that sometimes try and nip through at the beginning of the red light for them, and the beginning, therefore, of the green light for us. So it's important that our students learn to kind of double check that nothing's coming fast towards them or towards the crossing before they cross. Zebra crossings, as I said, one-way streets are slightly easier to cross. You only have to look one way. Quiet roads are easier than busy roads. Side roads off a main road, or roads with an island, these all take slightly different skills. So it's important that we make sure we practice each one. Some of our students require teaching for each one. Some do manage to generalize some of their skills from one to another, but we do want to check whether they can do it rather than assume that because we've taught them one crossing, they can do the other and then risk them not being safe when they go out. So when we're developing independence, we need to think about how we're prompting and prompt fading. We want to support the person to do things for themselves rather than doing things for them. We want them to be carrying their own bag, carrying their own money, as I mentioned before, carrying their own Oyster card. We want them to be the ones that are leading the way slightly. So we're with them, but they're not following us, and we're following them. Even though we're next to each other, we're not turning first, we see if they turn. We provide just enough support for them to be successful. So if they do need support, we offer that support, but we make sure that it's the lowest amount of support they require in order to get things right. We move away from presenting instructions to drawing their attention to natural cues. So rather than saying, okay, get your Oyster card out now, tap your Oyster card on here, which might mean that they then rely on the verbal instruction of getting the Oyster card out and tapping it. We instead might point towards the Oyster card reader, or we may use a natural prompt that might not need to be faded. So we may tap ours first. There's usually not the only person getting on the bus, so we tap it because we need to get on, and have them imitate us tapping it. We always want to allow them a couple of seconds to start and give them time to initiate independently before we step in to prompt, obviously making sure that safety is considered at all times. And often lots of these skills are very long sequences, so we break down the sequences into really small steps and we teach each step and once gradually increase the number of steps that they're doing themselves. So when teaching skills with multiple steps, using, for example, using the Oyster or contactless cards, this is kind of an example of with multiple steps. So they might have to remove it, open the wallet, take out the Oyster card, hold the Oyster card on the touchpad, move through the barrier or onto the bus, making sure they're kind of out of the way, put the Oyster card, contactless card back in the purse or wallet, put the purse or wallet back in the pocket bag. So it may seem like it's a small task, but actually there's lots of steps involved in learning that task. So when we do that, what we need to do is break down the skill into the steps, be very specific to install consistent teaching each time, and we want it to be really clear. Lots of our students are supported by multiple different individuals, both within our service but also carers, family members, and we don't want to send mixed messages because that can be confusing. So we want us all to be following the same steps so it's consistent and the student can learn the skill more quickly. We want to minimise verbal instructions so they don't only do things when they're asked, which can limit their independence and them following the natural sequence. And we want to teach the individual to complete each step cued from the outcome of the previous step. So, for example, when they remove their purse or wallet from the bag, they'll be holding their purse or wallet, and it's them holding it that we want to be the indicator that they should open it. And when it's open, that should be the reason that they take it out, rather than because we've then said the next thing. So the consequence of one step should become the trigger for the next step. When you're in the community, there's lots of other necessary skills that aren't really related to travelling, but are really important to have. So awareness of strangers and community helpers, ability to request for help from an appropriate person, knowledge of appropriate interactions with different groups of people, the ability to follow community signs, so especially things like no entry and wet floor for safety, the ability to look after their own belongings, knowledge of what to do if they fall or hurt themselves, the ability to respond to a fire alarm, moving carefully past people, saying things like sorry and excuse me, and also some kind of public transport etiquette. So like not putting your bags on the seat unless there's lots of empty seats because other people might want to sit down, and where to sit on the bus. So if there's lots of empty seats, then you should sit away from other people you don't know. If it's really busy, then it's okay to sit more close to a stranger. But if you get on a bus with only one person, you shouldn't go and sit next to that one person. And then we need to think also about making any adjustments. So dependent on the needs, skills or preferences of the individual, we might be able to achieve greater independence travelling if we make just a few adjustments, like avoiding travelling in rush hour if they struggle with really busy places or if they're going to find that difficult, allowing additional time for the journey and related travelling skills. So they have time to check the platforms, recheck the numbers, make their way down at their own pace, and that's not rushed. They may be able to do that independently, whereas if there's less time, they may need more support. And also things like I mentioned a little bit earlier about preference, but travelling by a preferred transport, even if it takes longer. So if they prefer travelling by a bus, even if it takes longer, they may be able to be independent getting somewhere, or more independent getting somewhere if it's a full bus route rather than involving trains or tubes. So considering about how we can make these adjustments to ensure greater independence. One of the other big things, and again, touched on it slightly earlier with the changes and delays and things, but there's often lots of unexpected or unplanned situations that come about when travelling by public transport. Changes to schedule or platform, cancellation of service or closure of station, the bus doesn't stop at the requested bus stop, walking to get off the bus, but the doors close and it moves off before disembarking, especially if you happen to be further at the back and the bus is busy. There might be an announcement to evacuate a station. The electricity might be turned off on a train, resulting in a blackout. You might arrive at a platform, there might be multiple police on the platform awaiting the arrival of the next train. Police might pull over a bus for dangerous driving, and other members of public may be having an altercation. And our students being able to safely navigate these situations is important. Unfortunately, this isn't an exhaustive list. These kind of things can be rare, but we want them to be prepared for even rare circumstances to make sure that they are safe when they're out, if they're out on their own. So another thing that's important for them managing unexpected or unplanned situations is learning the skills for that. So things like having the ability to tolerate the situation and self-regulate. We also need to be aware with this that they may, if they're underground, they may not have signal, for example. So if one of their strategy for being able to manage might be calling a known person and speaking to them on the phone about their worries, etc., it might be that we need to make sure that their route is overground on a place that they will have signal to make the calls if they need to, rather than them being underground and unable to access their support. And then also them learning the ability to amend plans, so either replan the route, be able to read a map or follow others, which I think most of us will do in those kind of situations. If you're somewhere and everyone's walking one way to evacuate, you kind of follow the crowd. The ability to follow announcements or directions from workers. Often in these kind of emergency situations, there are people on the platform directing people, and the ability for them to be able to follow those instructions is important. And also the ability to move away from any potentially dangerous situations. So, if they see an altercation, for them to go to maybe a different carriage or a different area to remove themselves from that area. So just to summarise, travel training is just so vital to make sure that our students can live a life full of choice and control and have the skills to follow their ideal week. We always start with the aim of safe access, so making sure they can actually access all the things they need to access. We'll plan to fade any prompts, and we teach them to respond to naturally occurring cues and supports that they can manage themselves. So thank you. Any questions? I see some have come through, so I'll start those. And I've got my email address is here if you'd like to email anything else. So one of the things, questions says, help with challenging behaviours in the car. Whenever we slow down or stop at traffic lights, there's a major meltdown, takes a seatbelt off, gets in the front seat. It's very dangerous, non-stop screaming. So lots of this would be about preparation as well during role playing things in the home. So preparation about things slowing down or stopping, maybe one of those spinny chairs with wheels where they want, they're going and you choose to stop, you put something up, it says stop, we have to wait, we can't push you anymore. And for whatever they enjoy, even if that's spinning, it doesn't have to fully replicate the being in a car. But that idea of you're enjoying something and you want it to continue, it's stopping for a little bit. Sometimes there can be things that help with the wait, depending on the student, like counting, for them to understand that it is finite and there's an end to it. We're not stopped forever. This isn't the end of the journey. We're going to have to wait here. It's red. Let's count to 100 and then we'll be able to go again. So lots of things that you can do in the skills of kind of waiting within lots of different activities. I hope that's kind of answered some of your question. Another question was, I worry about other people on public transport if my son looks at someone the wrong way or doesn't respond in the correct way. Yes, so some people are more understanding than others. I'm not entirely sure what you mean by doesn't respond in the correct way, but I guess the point is that if we can teach some of those social words like excuse me, sorry, or even just greeting, if they Wearing a lanyard, there's sunflower lanyards now. Lots of people are more aware of those, so it can be helpful to kind of demonstrate to members of the public that with someone who has an additional need and for that may need other things. I think another skill, I guess maybe you're worried about them getting into an altercation if someone approaches them, would be, as I was saying before, for them to walk away. So you want to leave a situation. So if someone's rude, if someone's doing something that may be rude or confrontational to you, you can just say, I'm sorry, and then walk away from that, rather than getting involved in a something that could be potentially more dangerous, and teaching about community helpers. So walking away and who to walk towards that might be able to help them. So, whether that be someone who works at the station or those kind of things. So that's our half an hour up. We've got, so thank you so much for joining our session. If you want to find out about more about how we can help you through bespoke training and outreach offerings, please get in touch or scan the QR code and you can book a free consultation. Our next session is Thursday, the 27th of February, and that's using symbols in aided language input to learn and play with a guest speaker, Sue White. She's the head of education at Widget, and a link to sign up will be in the following email. It should be a great session, so we look forward to seeing you later in the month. Thank you again for joining.